Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Not Your Mother's History Class.
Hey.
I'm Sydney.
I'm Caleb.
And this is Nova, who just insisted on appearing today. So she's our little special guest that I'm sure will be dipping out in a matter of 25 seconds. So today's topic is a really heavy one, and it is very sensitive for a lot of people, so we totally understand if you don't want to tune in after hearing the trigger warnings. That being said, trigger warnings, animal abuse, animal death, and also war. I will say that I have no intention of giving any kind of graphic detail or description of anything regarding animals or, even people. I'm not going to go into gory details because that's just not the point of this. So I will say that the topic of it, the subject of it is sad, but I'm not going to describe anything that would, make you sick to your stomach or anything like that. So just be warned that it is covering animals and animal abuse, but we won't be going into any kind of graphic, gross detail. So for today, I'm going to be the one sharing the research that I've collected about this topic, and Caleb hasn't really heard much about it, so he's going to be tagging along to kind of react as we go. And next week, it'll be Caleb's turn to share something with me that I've never heard before. I really like that idea to kind of
me too.
Go off of each other, week by week. All right, so what we are talking about today is anti-tank dogs. Now, this is probably something you have not heard of before, but it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It starts in 1924 when the Soviet Revolutionary War Council authorized the use of dogs in the military. So it starts as far back as 1920s.
Wow.
But the main kind of part of the story doesn't really start until World War II.
Okay.
So, which is, correct me, World War II was what time period?
Early 40s.
Early 40s?
Yeah,
okay,
ended in 45.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I thought, but dates are not really my thing. So what you may think of when you first think of dogs used as a weapon, essentially in war, you're going to think search and rescue, mine detection, attack dogs, that sort of thing.
Right.
So not in this case, unfortunately. Because in those cases, hello, Nova.
Hi.
In those cases, those dogs were typically, I would say for the most part, left hopefully unharmed. But again, that's not the case with what we're about to go into. So the plans to use dogs as bomb dogs or anti-tank dogs started around 1930.
Okay.
But they weren't really implemented until the Soviet Union wanted to use them as an act of desperation against the Nazis. So
right.
World War II, right?
Mm-hmm. Whenever the Nazis invaded Soviet Union.
Right.
And it was
pretty rough, and they were really powerful, and so truly an act of desperation to want to use dogs in this way. So you're probably asking now, what is an anti-tank dog? What am I talking about?
Right. How what are they doing?
Right. Mm-hmm. How are these dogs being harmed? And essentially the dogs had a bomb. They would have a bomb strapped to them with a lever on the back of it that they were trained to dive under German tanks.
Wow.
And in doing so, it would push on that lever, and it would, however the mechanics of it, I'm not about to pretend like I know what I'm talking about with the mechanics of a bomb.
I get the gist of it, yeah.
Right. So essentially them diving under it would set off the bomb. And of course, take the dog with it.
That is insane.
And incredibly sad.
Yes.
Essentially, in the beginning, they didn't intend to have the dogs die along with the bomb exploding. They tried to train them to take the bomb, drop it, and come back. Mm. But the problem that presented was that if they were on a timer and the dog didn't actually drop it, the dog's going to bring it right back to that handler.
Yeah, that's...
So that's not good.
Not good as a understatement.
That was the first thing they tried, was having it to where they would go and drop it and come back.
Okay.
They had even tried to see if there was a bomb that had detonators where they could just press a button. That way time wouldn't be a problem.
Remote detonator, okay.
But at the time, that was a very expensive thing. Detonators, remote detonators were not like a easy thing to come by or cheap thing to come by. Mm-hmm. So financially didn't make sense for them to use remote detonators, and they worried about their own safety and their own lives with the dog potentially bringing back a bomb on a timer back to the person who sent the dog. So they essentially said, I guess we're just going to strap the bomb to the dogs and that'll be the end of it. Again, super sad. None of those dogs deserved to be put in that situation at all. I mean, it's tragic. But that's why we want to talk about it, because it's not something that I had ever heard of. When I read this, I was like, with most of the things I've tried to research for this podcast, I read the headline of it and I'm like, that's not real. Like, that's not true. There's no way that it was a common use of dogs from the Soviet Union to just blow them up. No, I just, it's hard for me to believe that. Now, you're probably wondering, right, like, how do you train a dog
to go
run up under a tank?
Yeah.
Because that was literally my first question, is how do you train a dog to do that? They would just starve them.
What?
Yeah, they would just withhold all food from them and I couldn't find anything stating, how long they would hold food from them or how long they were starving. But I guess they were starving them for a while because, again, diving under tanks. Anyways, they would place meat or food up under these tanks as they were moving, and when they were training them, the tanks moved pretty slowly.
Okay.
But they would see that there's food under there and dive under there. So eventually, after all this training, that's all they associated with these giant machines that they can't comprehend. They're dogs, right? And so that's what they would associate it with, is food. So there is no fear there.
It adds a bit of cruelty to the already cruel story to think that they had to starve them to the point to where they're not scared of these giant, loud machines. And they just see them as a reward for food like you would.
It's so sad.
It really is.
It is so sad. And the other thing is that when they would train them, they would make sure that their surroundings mimicked that of, like, a battlefield, of, like, gunshots,
loud,
explosions, a ton of tanks going at one time.
People everywhere, I'm sure.
They seriously conditioned them to not think twice about running up under a tank for the sake of attacking the enemy. So,
yeah.
Super sad. And
yes, very sad. Anyway.
So in some cases, they didn't have the proper amount of time to train these dogs. And in those cases, more Soviet soldiers died as a result of lack of training those dogs than their enemy that they intended to attack.
Really?
Because of dogs coming back, or like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the full extent of why that was happening, but I can only imagine the dogs weren't fully trained, so there are going to be issues. But I did find that to be interesting, that in those cases of the dogs not receiving the proper training to make them do what they wanted them to do, that it would actually backfire on them.
I don't know if I feel bad for them.
I don't either. I don't feel bad for anybody involved in this on either side.
Yeah.
So let's make that perfectly clear. Also, if I'm laughing, it's just because I'm trying to make the whole tone of this lighthearted. I am not laughing at the content by any means. I just want to make that perfectly clear. So as I had said earlier, the vest that they would attach to the dog, it kind of looked like a service dog vest, which is so sad.
It really is.
But the difference, of course, is that there was a bomb attached to the back side of it, and it had a wooden stick type of thing.
Like a lever?
Yeah, it kind of looks like a lever.
Okay.
As it would go under the tank, it would, the bottom of the tank would press back on it, which would release the pin, and then that's when the bomb would go off. So
sad.
It is really sad. And all the pictures, again, none of the pictures are graphic.
Right. It's just the dogs with...
Yeah.
With the vest on. They look so just innocent.
It's just so messed up.
I understand that the Soviet Union was desperate, but you gotta wonder when it's too far.
And that's the thing, they didn't care.
No.
Like, that's the thing about war, is that it's not like they were like, is this too far? No.
And they are fighting Nazis. Were.
Yeah, well, were.
Yeah.
Well. So, overall, I think the most interesting fact, though, that I learned while I was researching all of this is that, of course, the dogs had to be trained on Soviet tanks. Of course. It's not like they had access to the German tanks to be training them. And the Soviet tanks were diesel-powered.
Okay.
Yeah. And dogs have a super strong sense of smell. So in addition to the food that they were associating smells with that tank, they're also associating that smell of diesel. And so the German tanks, when they would send them to the German tanks, you know, in battle, those were powered, you know, ran off gas.
Ooh.
So there's a significant smell difference, right? And that's...
And the dogs pick that up alongside the food, so they're thinking, this isn't right. I'm not going to get the food.
Yeah.
Because they're not smelling that diesel.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, even humans have like a bit, like they associate smells with things too. Not in the same way, of course, but it's the same concept, just
but you got to think with
enhanced
dogs,
because dogs have such like
incredible
crazy sense of smell. Yeah. So because of that, sometimes they would attack the wrong tanks. Yeah, because they were associating that.
They smell the diesel and they.
Yep. Again, I'm not saying karma, because karma needs to go all the way around on both sides.
This is
I'm
backfiring
just saying,
more so than...
In this specific case, that was karma. That was karma. But anyway, I really thought that was interesting.
It is, because I didn't
their own plan backfired on them. Not every time. I don't think... Like, it was pretty successful. Unfortunately, the whole use of dogs in this way ended up being pretty successful. So this didn't happen every time. But it did happen quite a few times. And
successful in saving human lives.
Yeah. So thankfully, they didn't use them for too terribly long, because by 1942, the use of anti-tank / bomb dogs decreased significantly, mostly because of the advancement in technology, the innovation and effectiveness of newer weaponry that didn't include them having to train a living, breathing thing to fight their wars for them. But yeah, so thankfully they didn't use them for a long time, and they realized that to them they just stopped using them because it wasn't effective. However, we're just thankful that not more dogs had to die. So yeah, I just find this entire thing to be insane, because how have we never heard about this before?
No, because I'm someone that I would consider myself a history buff nerd, especially when it comes to military history and World War II era, and I've never heard of this.
Which is wild. And like he can talk my ear off about some like military history and stuff, and like I listen and it's like super interesting, but this has never come up for sure. So
I've heard of stuff, unfortunately, with horses, but never dogs. I've heard of them using as like sniffing mines.
Yeah.
But never becoming a mine itself. It's
so sad.
It is.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in to episode 2 of Not Your Mother's History Class. We hope you learned something interesting, although sad, today. Something that you can share with other people, or tell them to tune into us. You know, if you don't want to tell it, let us tell them, you know? So in 2 weeks, we will have our next episode that Caleb's going to be leading,
Yes.
which I'm super excited for, because I talk a lot. So to have someone else be able to talk and tell me the information, I'm just like super excited. Just sit over here, keep my mouth shut, and just react. So
it's gonna be fun.
I'm gonna be sitting right with you guys while you listen and hear these things for the first time. That's gonna be me, like Caleb was today. So yeah, tune in for that in 2 weeks. Topic TBD, because Caleb's got to do some research. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, thank you so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello, and we're so glad you got to see our cats this time.
Yeah.
I had a specific request from a friend to include our cats, so Nova was sure to make her appearance. You're welcome, Raina. So yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, be sure to watch us on YouTube next time if you can. We'd love for you to see us. Wish we could see you, but we can't. But anyway, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening.